Alright, we're back. Got a little distracted. Oops. Oh, God. It's doing the exposure thing again. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. There's really nothing I can do about it except try not to move as much, which is hard because, you know, I have ADHD. Anyway, got a little distracted making some Instagram reels because I think I look cute. So, I was supposed to start like an hour ago. Oh well, nobody's counting. Alright. Chapter 9. And this has the sixth house skull. Sixth house skull. I can say words. I can say words. Stinky, please do not touch the stand. Please. If the camera wiggles, you'll know. What are you doing to my cord? Why are you biting the cord? Stop it! Oh my goodness! Stop it! He has never done this, but leave it. Leave it alone. Oh my God. I'm gonna move it, so hopefully he doesn't. Hey, leave it. You never play with me. What's happening? No, seriously, dude, what's happening? Oh my God. I'm trying to drape it up so he doesn't touch it. Okay. Right. Oh my goodness, I was really not expecting that. He's not really the type to play. He's just the type to, you know, cuddle and ask for attention. But apparently the cord was very tempting for him. Usually he just like headbutts things. Like he wants scratches. Cats are a mystery. I don't understand them. Anyway, let's try that again. Nona jolted awake with a start when she felt a tender slobbering on her ankle. I like that. It was Noodle's terribly licky tongue investigating the bit where the bone of her foot made a bump, which he obviously thought was a friendly gesture. She could have only been asleep for a little while. The sun hadn't moved, and the big, hot blue shadows of the courtyard were shimmering in the same position they always had. He's gonna get up on the bed again. Whatever. I give up. He's not supposed to go on the bed. I don't want to get up. Whatever. Okay. The big hot blue shadows of the courtyard were shimmering in the same position they always had. But she startled herself upright anyway, freaking out that she had snored away most of the hour of science without taking care of Noodle, or even looking for whoever was watching the building. It's okay. You can take a nap sometimes. She checked Noodle to make sure his pattens were on, retrieved the bowl and the bottle, and took the dog inside. She was very relieved to hear the angel's voice coming through the door and floating down the stairs, explaining why the ice cube in the sock had melted more slowly than the ice cube not in the sock. She sat down on the stairs and began assisting Noodle out of his pattens. Nona had assumed Noodle would be grateful, but he still turned around and showed her the whites of his eyes, despite the fact that she was now taking him out of the pattens rather than putting them on, and he wriggled. The cloakroom door opened, and out came Hot Sauce. "What did you say?" she demanded. Nona was bewildered. "What did I say when?" "Out in the courtyard." "Oh, nothing," said Nona, barely able to remember. "I wasn't good at pretending to talk at all. I just pretended I was talking to someone else, and I only talked for like 10 seconds because I felt silly." Hot Sauce did not look convinced. "Better come inside early. We've used the hairdryer." "What happened when I talked on the radio?" Hot Sauce hesitated, then said, "The watcher took off." All right, I'm back. Had some food while I was at it. Oh, of course. What? I've let you in. What do you want? He was yelling at the door until I let him in. Mm-hmm. Shameless. Shameless. Shameless little bastard. That's how cats are. Yes. What else do you want? Every time I move my head too far. Whatever. Not much I can do about that. My background is as light as I can make it. I'm not going to put a sheet behind me. Anyway, let's go back to it. Go and get turned into goat. What? The watcher took off. Well, that's good, isn't it, right? I need to investigate. But it's useful to know, isn't it? But when Hot Sauce shrugged, Nona could tell she thought Nona didn't understand. Knew that Hot Sauce was keeping things back. Something she didn't mind as much when Hot Sauce did it, but still minded a little. It was shitty being able to tell when people were holding back from her. Hot Sauce just said, "Come inside." Why do I get the feeling it's because she said crown? It wasn't a great end to the school day, and it seemed to jinx everything from there on. Nona, sitting at the back with Noodle, found she couldn't follow what was happening in the hour of science, which culminated in a lot of ice cubes removed from strange places to triumphant shrieks from the crowd. And then there was the familiar pop, pop, pop from the street, really close, so they had to close all the blinds, and the nice lady teacher had to go downstairs to make sure everything was locked up. And they did everything. Don't bother the camera stand. And they did everything sitting down away from shot lines from the window. They'd all done gunfire drill a million times, and hardly any of the tinies got scared, even when the dreary sirens started up outside. It was more boring and hot than it was terrifying. Even the angel only seemed annoyed. I love that they keep just calling her the angel. No name needed, just the angel. Not angel, the angel. That's too close for comfort, she commented. Probably a one-off. But it wasn't a one-off. It kept happening. They cut off any plenary time and mopped up ice water, and the main teacher read to them from a book after a vote. Plenary. What's plenary, buddy? What are you doing? Is he gonna knock over my sword? I hope he doesn't. That thing's foam. The instruments are not mine, but the sword is there. I wanted to bring it in for ambiance along with the skull. Yes, Stinky. Plenary. Guessing that means maybe nap time or any, recess, break, or whatever. Very fancy way to say it. Come on. I just want to know the definition to this word. Complete in all respects, unlimited or full, fully attended by all qualified members. That's not helpful. Cat hair. Everywhere. This is the only downside. You are so cute and so soft, yet you shed literally everywhere, all of the time. The tinies outvoted everyone to select a book that wasn't even good. A sloppy tale about some children who went to the beach and weren't eaten by anything. Another sign of the afternoon being cursed, Nona thought dolefully. At least school was nearly over for her. Of course, now that he's bored with me, he's getting on the bed again. People's parents snuck in despite the fact that there was still shooting going on a couple streets away. Some of them said that it had been like that for hours, and their child wouldn't come back for afternoon school, even though both the angel and the nice lady teacher tried to get them all to stay until it was better. They were still arguing when Camilla came to pick up Nona, and even though the lady teacher's eyes brightened to see Cam, Nona could see her pamphlet hand twitching. Cam bundled her out of there before she even got a proper goodbye. The last thing she saw was Hot Sauce sitting by the blinded-up window, thoughtful and still as a statue in the park. Only her head was still on, of course. I love that information. Yet another little nugget of information. Camilla led Nona by a very circuitous way home. They stopped at the street their building was on, and Cam ducked into a bakery and came out with a warm and probably radioactive paper bag full of pastries that had been under the bakery light the whole time. Is that why you think it's radioactive? When Nona asked how she got the money, Cam said, "Never mind." Nona was annoyed. You can just say you stole some, Cam. I don't mind." "I sold something," said Camilla. Light dawned on Nona back home after she had choked down some of the meat roll. She tried not to complain about it, but did the thing where she drank water until she said, "I'm full." And Cam said, "Then well, wait, you haven't had enough protein today. You hadn't had any protein today," and she had to eat it anyway. What is it about her and not wanting to eat? Like, I guess we should put another purple tab there, because it's been mentioned enough times that it's probably significant. So, instead of yellow, we shall do purple. Yellow and purple at this point. A little bit interchangeable, because some of the purples are just like guesses. This seems important, but I don't know yet, obviously. She peeled off the casing and ate the stuff inside and hated the experience, but at least then it was over. Or she's just like really picky about what she eats, which, you know, fair. I'd probably be pretty picky about what I ate if I lived like that. In like a weird radioactive world with mush. I'm spoiled. While Cam was cleaning up, she checked the secret drawer and found that the cigarettes were all gone. When Camilla came back in to tack up the blackout curtains, Nona said, "You sold her stash. Pyrrha's gonna freak out." "Pyrrha will deal," said Camilla. "Start stretching." Which meant it was time for swords. When Nona said passionately, "I hate swords. You don't even teach me how to use them," this just got written down on the clipboard, as though even her complaints were only useful for research. Nona felt very bitter about life. I forgot that the tag on this shirt's kind of itchy and I never cut it out. Oh well. But her bitterness slowly ebbed away, as it always did, and turned into something a little more like misery. Pyrrha was late coming home that evening. It had used to be that after the bones and the swords, Nona would spend sultry evenings out at the harbor, to swim if the beach was empty, and if there's nobody there to see, or to dig clams and cockles out with a stick if there were people. Interesting that she wasn't allowed to swim. Oh, of course, because she can't swim with like a hazard suit on or whatever. That protective equipment. Walking made her tired, but she could swim in the salt water for hours and never get enough of it. I hate to use another tab, like a page, like literally a page. It's the same page, like physically the same page, but that is some info that I think might be interesting. It was comfortable and private. That's the funny thing, though. Saltwater connects all three of them. It's probably not a very big thing, but I still think that's interesting. It was comfortable and private. Unfortunately, these days if she said, "Cam, can't we go swimming?" Cam would say, "Remember what happened the last time?" and won every argument that way. That was because what happened last time was that Camilla had got sick, and less important, Nona had got shot. What? I mean, I realize why that is less important to Nona, because she can heal. What? I remembered how much cat hair bothers me when it gets on my clothes, so I had to take him out. Also, he wasn't even hanging out with me, so like, what's the point? If I'm gonna get cat hair on my clothes, I might as well hang out with a cat. So if you hear him complaining, it's because I've locked him out. What had happened was that after the bones one day, Calamity said she looked peaky and made her eat crackers and spread until Nona worked herself halfway to a tantrum. In the end, Calamities had to promise her a swim for a whole 20 minutes before she would do anything, eat anything, or agree to anything. It was bad behavior, but Nona had been a whole month younger. Promises made, Calamities got to go away, saying, "Tell Cam I said it was a water cure," to which Camilla remarked that Calamities was an enabler. It didn't matter to Nona. She'd already got her towel and the old shirt she used to swim in. Much easier to go naked, but the others had all objected to this. And Cam had said it would make her a sniper target. And her jandals. What? They can't be jean sandals. They can't. Man, Ma'am. Ma'am. Why do you keep doing this to us? Am I really looking up jandals? It's gonna be like a completely different item of clothing. Please? Oh, it's just a kind of sandal. Along the east coast of the U.S., flip-flops are sometimes referred to as zoris. I have, well, am I on the east coast? Yeah, I'm on the east coast. God, who knows? Jandals. New Zealand. Of course it's New Zealand slang. Caitlin, you'll appreciate that. She's not gonna watch this. But, you know. And then after masks were tied and hats put on, they walked to the beach in the low dusk. That evening they'd walked around the long way, which meant it took fully half an hour to get there. But often they walked different routes to throw off anyone who might have gotten interested and tried to follow them. On this walk they ended up spending a little time by the city graveyard. All the concrete tops had been sludged open and the buried coffins had been dug up, piled high and burned. The smoke still clung to the sides of the buildings and made Nona gag. Pyrrha told her this was business as usual. Pyrrha said the first thing that happened was all bones got burned, whether they were moving around or not. First thing that happened when the cohort gets there? Not the cohort. When Blood of Eden gets there? When whatever cell of Blood of Eden they're in? Or something? By the time they had gotten to the beach, Nona was depressed, but it only took her feet being in the salt water to make her happy again. She's a simple creature, like me. Camilla never came in with her. This was because there were heaps and heaps of jellyfish in the harbor, with their beautiful bodies transparent at the crown and deep indigo at the very tips, and they weren't at all afraid to come up near to you and brush you. On Nona, this made the place they touched tingle a little, but nothing else. That was why Nona had always swum at dusk, because Cam said the jellyfish sting killed most people within minutes. The water seethed with them because the harbor was closed, and nobody was fixing the barrier nets. Those poor jellyfish. Is that a Portuguese man of war? I used to be obsessed with those jellyfish. Because A, they're gorgeous, and B, super deadly things are fascinating. Instead, Cam sheltered near the concrete pillars of a jetty, out-of-sight lines, with a beat-up paperback book. It had been earlier in the spring, and night had fallen fast. There was no electric light, so she had a little torch. The first time Nona had asked to swim, they had let her without cavil. Why do I keep having to look up words? I mean, that one I can guess what that means. Probably without too much fuss. She had barely known how to explain herself then, but her hunger was so terrible that she'd made them all understand. What now? I just heard my eyes blinking. Her hunger? For salt water? What tab do I even put there? I guess yellow, since it doesn't really make sense. Oh my gosh. Yeah, my yellow and my purple tabs are just getting used for similar stuff. Anyway, for security, Camilla had taken handfuls of rocks and sailed each one up into the center of the lamps that shone down from the pier. With a terrific smash of plastic and the brief, snappish yowl of a busted wire, and nobody had come to fix them since. They wouldn't have had time. The blue light had appeared in the sky soon after. Here comes the random bits of information. I do not have many of these left, so... You know, this is what I get for assuming, like, the blue descriptions of the sky are, you know, the sky, especially since she kept saying that, you know, the sky used to be butterscotch colored. I don't know, okay? It had been high tide that night. Nona had gone wading into the shallows immediately, picking her way over the big pockmarked rocks and the slippery seaweed clumps floating haplessly in the surf, until she was up to her thighs, the shirt billowing around her. Then she plunged into the salt water. She had let herself go under and felt the huge rocking cradle of the waves rolling her forward to the beach, nearly weeping with relief. Like going to the bathroom when you were really desperate, or drinking when you were really thirsty, or hearing the door open when you were really lonely. The black water sank right down to the roots of her hair, right through the braids, and made her ears go pop as water blocked up the canals. Bubbles rippled across her face as her laugh came out as oxygen. That's cool, I like that. She kicked up to the surface, and her hair and her shirt floated all around her in the water, and she bobbed there in the dark, avoiding the inviting yellow squares of light that the other jetty lamps made on the roiling surface. Then she clung to one of the wooden legs of the pier, bubbled all over with barnacles, and crusted with salt, and plastered with dried-out fans of seaweed, and watched as blue jellyfish moved around her, squirting through the water or drifting there, looking dead until suddenly they would undulate forward in delicate blue squiggles of movement. She did get stung, but the sting only gave her pins and needles in one foot, which was soon over. She pushed off from the pillar again and into a wave, and let the tide carry her forward slowly to the rocky shore. Salt water had always relieved her. Salt water made her feel as though if there was someone in there with her, she would suddenly know the words to tell them everything. Okay, that's more connected to Harrow and Gideon than it is to Alecto. I'm running with my theories, okay? I gotta put that there. Gotta put another purple tab. These are just getting mixed up at this point, but whatever. I apologize for the background noise, but at this point, I personally have started tuning it out because they yell at me a lot, or they used to yell at me a lot in the morning because I used to not get up early enough for them, and I was like, I am not letting you guys make me get up earlier. And then eventually they stopped. Did I manage to get a piece of hair under the sticky part? Oh my goodness gracious. This is gonna bother me, I'm sorry. I gotta get it out. Not even cat hair. Or if it is, it's one of the other cats. Okay. Alright, there we go. I'm going to read that sentence again because it made me emotional. Salt water had always relieved her. Salt water made her feel as though if there was someone in there with her, she would suddenly know the words to tell them everything. The sea was so kind after a hot, concrete-smelling day, and she knew the water had runoff in it, but it seemed so clean anyway. The sea was a big, grinding, unchangeable machine. The only terrible part was an awful longing to let her head go below the surface, to lose all buoyancy and lie at the bottom like a flat fish. Nona didn't want to die, but she wanted to sit in the water and drowse, which she was forced to admit was the same thing eventually. That fatal evening, she lay with her arms and legs spread out and her middle only a little submerged, shirt plastered flat to her belly and chest. She stared up at the glowing blue circle in the night sky. It crowded out the stars and looked much like an incandescent jellyfish itself crowning in a black ocean. Glowing blue circle. Okay, so now it's a glowing blue circle, not just, you know, blue something. It is pretty, though, so I'm going to put a green tab there. Crowning in a black ocean. Oof. I'm just thinking about one of my tattoo ideas, which is sea creatures in space, and jellyfish and sea turtles and whales are definitely 3 of those. It crowded out the stars and looked much like an incandescent jellyfish itself crowning in a black ocean. Nona had been very happy when she turned around and kicked back towards the jetty and the shore, slipping among the waves and the foam and the floating plastic rings people used to keep bottles together. It felt so easy to be good when you were happy. Nona had been ready to eat as many meals as Camilla had wanted her to, so long as the number was less than 3. She'd made it to the end of the pier, and Camilla was clear in view, and a big shock went right down her spine when she saw her, not because it was Camilla, but because she was not alone. There was a little cluster of figures in tatty coats spread out on the beach on the side they'd come in on. Nona counted 6 of them. They looked black-headed, but when Nona squinted, she saw that they were wearing goggles and caps, or wraps around their heads. One of them was holding one of those little motorized bikes that you often saw going plut-plut down the streets of the city. It was turned off now except for the lamp, which was on full brightness. The suds and the waves filled her ears, and she could not make out what anyone was saying, if they were saying anything. It was impossible to see their mouths. Easy enough to see Camilla, silhouetted in the lamp of the plut-plut bike. The plut-plut bike, I love it. Strung across one of the supports beneath the pier like a sinuous night animal. Wait, what? Easy enough to see Camilla, silhouetted in the lamp of the plut-plut bike, strung across one of the supports beneath the bike like a sinuous night animal. A, what the fuck does that mean? B, what the fuck did you do to Camilla? The beam was hot and white and bright, and Camilla hovered within it like a moth. I'm guessing that if I keep reading, I will find out, but I kind of don't want to. Nona assumed it was the police. Only the police got to have those bikes, but still couldn't afford good jackets. Each one had a shoulder holster, which meant each one had a short gun, and they stood in a kind of triangular gaggle with one right at the point before Camilla. One what right at the point before Camilla? Person or gun? Or person with a gun? I'm assuming person. Oh. Nobody's guns were drawn! But the holsters were out in the open, each a kind of glittering mechanical bulge at the top of the chest. Camilla had put her hands out in a beseeching no guns here kind of way. The light made the wrist strap watch on her arm glitter. She swung her legs down off her pillar to land in a little puff of sand. Oh, she was like... When it says strung across the support, one of the supports, that I just didn't get what image that made in my head. It made me feel like she was on a string or something, not just like sitting on top of one of the pillars. She swung her legs down off the pillar to land in a little puff of sand with one hand still raised. She rummaged around in her pocket, threw something down on the ground, backed off. One of the figures ducked forward and picked it up. Nona kept the water right up to her eyes and began to approach, made it to the next pole in the jetty and the pole after that. But Camilla tucked her hair behind one ear as though she was nervous and flashed her palm out to the jetty. One thumb tucked in, 4 fingers spread. That was a sign to stay put. Nona hesitated, then stayed put. There was a lot of discussion in the triangle about whatever had been picked up. It could have been a perfectly ordinary conversation, albeit a conversation between 6 people with guns in a triangle and 1 person with her hands up. Camilla was so bad at staying still. Even as they talked, she stretched in that cold white circle of light, one foot pressing down into the sand and then the other, slowly and deliberately and liquidly. Nona swam to the nearest pillar. That's not a word. Nona swam to the nearest pillar, found her footing on a big metal screw, and waited, buffeted by the waves and the brushing lappets of 3 comfortably stinging jellyfish. She still couldn't make out what they were saying. One of the police, in parentheses, had thrown the object back down into the sand in front of Camilla. Nona could see it better now. It was Cam's wallet. Had they asked for papers or something? Camilla didn't retrieve it. Then, all at once, one of the cops at the back drew their gun. Nona threw herself forward into the water and shot. The muzzle flashed. Camilla hadn't fallen down. She hadn't been hit. The bullet had gone wide past her shoulder and she hadn't moved, hadn't ducked, hadn't done anything except keep her hands up. Nona kicked silently to the pillar in front, where she could hear snatches of conversation. Said, scare her, did what you... Speak house, Camilla was saying. The figure at the front made their mouth look different and said exaggeratedly loudly and clearly, try again, unjust hope says. But the waves took the rest. Camilla said something Nona didn't catch at all. So, I was correct. The houses have their own language. Not that I feel that probably wasn't that hard of a realization to make. Whatever. Camilla said something Nona didn't catch at all. The cop turned around and said, mouth different again, but a bullet in her this time. The one with the gun responded, sounding garbled, but the first figure said clearly, get the knee, I'm sick of this, and something else. Nona had broken. Her only use was translating, and there she was listening to the most important conversation that had ever been had, and she was not translating. She had surged out of the water and shrieked, run, they're going to shoot you! And instead of shooting Camilla, the cop with the gun aimed right into the dark water and shot Nona. It felt like someone had punched her in the shoulder hard. Nona did as Pierre had taught her and went completely limp. For a moment, her shoulder felt hot and awkward, and there was a hot burst of blood over her arm, feeling weird against the cool salt water. A yellow light shot through the waves like a dropped egg, and she writhed in its silhouette briefly before deciding to sink right to the bottom. The light arced back and forth, swinging around, never finding her. She counted to 20, glad she had taken a big breath, waiting there at the bottom and clutching the black rocks. It was very murky. Every so often a questing jellyfish would bob into view, and she had to bat it away from her face. She thought she heard a brief report coming thickly from far away, as though maybe someone had pushed the part of the bike that went honk. Then there were weird white lights, quick, darting, moving lights like very small fireworks. But Nona kept what Pyrrha called firing discipline. Only at the end of the long 20 seconds did she kick away, launching herself forward along the rocky bottom until she hit one of the jetty pillars. By that time, the pain and the weird feeling were over. The bullet had gone clean through the topmost part of her arm, which was good, and there wasn't even a hole to show where it had been. She felt a little sick, but that was all. Nona had never been shot before. She inched up the pillar until her head broke water. The beach had gone very quiet. The Plut-Plut bike's headlight still shone out in her direction, blinding her a little. As Nona's eyes adjusted, she saw Camilla squatting on the sand. Everyone else was fanned out, lying down around her, as though they'd all decided to take a school-time nap. Nona waded through the water, heart racing, struggling through the surf, thrashing upward through the shallows, pulling herself to stand. Her feet felt numb, but looking back, that was probably the jellyfish. Each and every single person who wasn't Camilla was down on the ground. Their unholstered guns were still clutched in their hands or scattered loosely near them. The sand underneath each one was oily black. It hadn't been that hot, but wisps of steam curled up from the dark, wet sand. Camilla was crouched down, wiping her knives on one of their jackets. When she looked up, Nona was electrified. One of her eyes was a pale pearlescent gray. The other one of her eyes was a deep, cool stone color. Nona understood in a sudden shiver what she was looking at. I don't. I mean, I kind of do, but I don't. Stay calm, said Camilla and Palamides. 5 breaths if you need it. Camilla and Palamides' voice was strange to her, cool and efficient, distantly kind. But Nona wasn't angry. The air smelled strongly of smoke and burnt metal. It made her deeply unhappy and very hungry, even though she forced down all those crackers. I thought if I played dead, Nona began and stopped because a big lump had come into her throat. She felt stupid. She felt she was being ungrateful. When Camilla and Palamides smiled that strange new person smile, she suddenly felt very shy. But Camilla's clockwork interrupted with a series of urgent beeps. The beep, 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 beep of a timer alarm, faster and more panicked than the usual time's up sound. Camilla Palamides got up all of a sudden, as though they wanted to get getting up over and done with as quickly as possible, and swayed backward and forward a little. The blood on the beach was steaming. Their hands were steaming. Nona struggled forward to catch them, the new person, but then Camilla straightened and blinked furiously, and it was Camilla. Her eyes were pale gray again, and she shuddered like herself. Huh. Now I want to look up what was that one time when Harrow had one eye each. It was when she was telling Ianthe to help her with her homebrew lobotomy. So basically it means something's wrong. Kind of, I'm assuming. Assuming what she means about Cam being sick is that either they took up too much time or doing that much necromancy hurt her. Interesting. Okay. She said a little hoarsely, but in quite normal Camilla tones, "Not your fault." Then she equally normally set to putting her knives away, sticking them in the bands down her thighs, inside her trousers. And normally seeing that made Nona want to laugh, but that night she felt as though she might vomit instead, which would have added insult to injury. Camilla said, "Shoulder?" She didn't sound angry at all, but strangely quiet and tight. "It's fine, I'm fine." "Cam, what did you do?" "No questions. They didn't have silencers. We need to go. Get the bike." Nona wasn't able to help herself. She burst out with, "What did they want?" Until they were Mervwing. Turn the lights off. Once again, that means nothing to me. Let's put a purple tab there, just in case. The spotlight was still shining out over the ocean like a very small moon. Nona righted the Plut-Plut bike and turned off the headlight, which left the beach blue and cold. She kept looking at the fallen cops, at their necks and at their chests, but Camilla gently drew her chin up and away, urging her forward, putting the towel around her wet shoulders. It felt nice and dry and scratchy. Nona mechanically wheeled the bike over the sand. Cam threw down her jandals and she squeezed her feet into them, the sand gritty on the bottoms of her heels. Camilla didn't say anything. She had zipped up her dark jacket even though the night was still warm, and Nona thought she understood. She was cold, too. Colder than she ought to have been even when wet. Camilla kept her arms folded tight over her chest as though she was thinking. Nona was too sodden with regret and self-hatred and seawater to think about anything but that. Think anything but that Cam must have been very angry with her for calling out. And so she was blind to the truth of the situation until they wheeled the bike off the ramp and weaved it through the poles that were meant to prevent you bringing bikes onto the beach, and Camilla suddenly staggered to a halt. She leant hard against the wall and shuddered. Nona nearly dropped the bike. "Cam?" "Towel," said Camilla very calmly, "and don't scream." Nona was about to be indignant, but then Cam unzipped her jacket and she nearly screamed. Cam's thin cotton top was sodden with blood. The tops of her pants and her whole jacket were already black and wet from spray, so it hadn't really showed the blood coming through. The worst part was that the blood was coming from everywhere, with no wounds or bullet holes or stab marks. It was coming out of her skin. Cam rubbed the towel down both of her arms briskly. The towel came away bright red. "Blood sweat," she said unsteadily. "Get Palamides," was all Nona could think to say. "Get Palamides, he can fix it." "No," said Camilla. Nona had noticed her lips had gone the same color as the skin around them, a sort of ashen rosy brown instead of either skin or lips being normal. Cam's voice was still very even and calm, but it was quiet and came out strangely punctuated as she took in breaths. "He can't. Not this. Make it worse. But get us home," said Camilla. "You can do it. On the bike." The bike? Yet it was not to be borne that Nona would say, "But my car sickness." If Camilla said anyone could do anything, they could do it. It was not the kind of thing she said often, or at all. It was more buoyed by the sucker punch of Camilla's belief than through her own confidence. She suddenly needed to go to the bathroom, which Palamides always said was her displacement activity. But Nona got on the bike. Her courage had nearly failed her when Camilla got behind her and wrapped her arms around Nona's middle very tightly. Nona had realized then that Cam was worried about falling off. Even thinking about it now, how Nona drove Cam through those black streets she did not know, ignoring all the traffic signals, slowing down laboriously to turn into the little side alleys, the lone truck breaking curfew that chugged along the street next to her, like a massive animal of hot wind and noise. But she did, and it took both forever and no time at all. Camilla was very warm and solid behind her, with her arms unflinchingly tight. She never released her grip, which was nice until Nona realized that half the warmth was the blood seeping through the towel. She was about to guide the bike into the garage beneath the building before Cam said, "Dump it, here," in her, I just want to, go so fast that my brain is going too fast. In a voice barely more than a whisper. Here was behind a big rubbish cache next to the building. Cam stirred herself against the wall, and Nona wheeled it into the gap behind the cache in the wall, then covered the gap up with boxes. She was pleased with the neatness of it until she came back to Camilla and saw the deathly pallor of her face. the stillness that was not Palamedes, but Camilla conserving all of her blood for silence. That sounds so cool! I mean, like, I was about to say I'm not 100% sure what that means, and I was like, no, I know exactly what that means. It's just that it's like a different kind of phrase than what, you know, you'd usually use, which is, I love that in writing, when people use things or verbs or adjectives in, you know, ways that they don't usually get used. Enrichment. In the black nighttime of that alley, the towel around Camilla's middle was black with blood, and the seawater and blood had dried on Nona's clothes. She put Camilla's arm around her shoulders, and they crept into the garage, each breath from Cam's mouth high and tight. It was so strange to hear Camilla breathing at all. Somehow they made it up the stairs. Of course, the elevator didn't work, and Nona was almost too slippery and panicky to knock. When Pyrrha opened the door, all Nona was able to say was pitifully, "No, no, no," like the baby she had been. But what a relief it was at the time, to give things over to Pyrrha. Pyrrha had carried Camilla to bed, and her big brown arms, like Cam weighed nothing, was less than Nona. Pyrrha said, "What happened?" And Nona told her, and Pyrrha wasn't even angry. But when Nona told her about Cam's eyes, she looked at Nona and said a completely new swear word. It was such an unusual swear word that later on Nona was able to swap it to honesty for 5 whole cigarettes. He was that impressed. That's adorable. Pyrrha sat down with Cam's head in her lap and pinched her awake, and then made her drink little sips of water. Cam's eyes were almost closed, like an animal's when they weren't quite asleep. The water brought her around a little. Pyrrha kept saying low and steady, "Don't black out, kid. You're in the energy shock. Stay awake. Come on." After about 5 minutes of that treatment, Cam's eyes opened all the way, and she drank the rest of the water mostly on her own. She let Nona give her a painkiller, but just a cap, not a needle. In the end, Pyrrha said in a calm, dead voice, "You can't do that ever again, Hecht. Never. Synthesis is a one-way ticket. I walked the eightfold. I should damn well know. I'd give Palamedes the hiding of his fucking life if he wasn't renting an ass with you." Once again, I'm not 100% sure what's happening. Oh my goodness gracious. Camilla, cradled in Pyrrha's arms with all the towels bright red, looked up at Pyrrha like Nona wasn't even in the room. Her eyes were chill and gray and gleaming. She whispered, "Don't tell him I was weak. He's going to know, Heck. You're killing each other. It's our choice. He's going to ask. Do what you're good at," said Camilla. "Lie. Hecht, you're not listening. It's killing him too." "It was good," said Camilla, and her eyes closed. "It was good. We were happy." Pyrrha stayed put until Camilla fell asleep. The expression on her face was one Nona had never seen her wear before. Nona stayed too, except to go occasionally to the bathroom out of prolonged stress. Finally, Pyrrha told Nona to go make up her bed next to Pyrrha's, on the fold-out part of the couch. And when Nona asked if Camilla was going to be all right, Pyrrha said, "No." But when she saw the expression on Nona's face, she put on a smile. Produced ones. Like the ones she would produce sweets or coins, or little magazines, and said, "Don't worry about it, Junior. I don't mean we're going to find her dead in the morning." That's real comforting, Pyrrha. Then she'd gone to the kitchen and poured herself a little glass of clear grain alcohol. She crossed to the taped-up window, bottle and glass in hand. To Nona's awe, she twitched the blackout curtains aside, stood bathed in the hyper-blue light from the sky as Nona held her breath, and she said to the window, "Here's to Camilla Hecht, yet another of devotion's casualties," and knocked back the glass. Then she said to the light, quite gently, "No, I don't blame you, man. He was always looking for things to throw himself on." Who's she talking to? Who is she talking to? God? Gideon? Who are you? Yet another of devotion's casualties. That is going to need a blue tab. Personal favorite quotes. My God. Then Pyrrha settled down on the bed she had extended for Nona and knocked back 2 more little glasses of alcohol. She let Nona taste a little bit of the second glass when Nona asked, but Nona thought it was awful. It tasted like petrol and felt like sunburn. When she lay down, she kept wiping her lips to take the taste away. "If Cam's fine," she said, "why did you just say goodbye to her?" "How'd you know it was goodbye?" When Nona opened her mouth, Pyrrha said, "Don't answer that. Go to sleep." And after that, there'd been no more swimming. Chapter 10. We've got the second house skull, but it's got a slash through it. Kind of like the ones for the, you know, river flashbacks. Well, flashbacks. River flashbacks in Harrow's book. But it's like a black slash. And I'm trying to check. I feel like the ones for Harrow were white slashes. Well, this one's a white slash. I'm just turning into a ghost again. Now let me check, because, you know, this has gotta be for some reason. I love how I'm just like, I sound like a weird conspiracy theorist, but it's not like... Yeah, they're white slashes. Sometimes it's all the way through, sometimes it's not all the way through. Let's check. I've tried 2 of them, and so far 2 of the chapter headings had white slashes like that. Yep, another white slash, this time all the way through. Huh. What is that supposed to mean? I think it's probably got more to mean with, I mean, I'm guessing it's got more to do with the skull that it is slashing, aka the cohort, than the point of view of the chapter or the setting of the scene. That's my guess, but who knows. I think this is the first time I've seen a slashed skull. I think, I would have noticed if any of the other ones. That's the problem with tabs. It's hard to flip through. Yeah, that one's fine. That one's fine. That one's fine. That was a cohort one, so it was fine. Yeah. Yeah, I think this is the first time. It's funny, sometimes you get the jawless skull for the 9th, and sometimes you don't. I wonder what that means. I mean, obviously, sometimes you get the Gideon skull. You know, they've got all of them right here, like they did on the inside of Harrow. But, the inside of Harrow, I'm assuming, is white on, black on white, and not white and black, like here. Or blue. The slashes look black, though. Well, some of them. Oh, no, it's just for the cohort that the slash is black. I'm making this whole thing of it. Meanwhile, it's literally just the one time because the cohort skull has so much white in it because of the helmet. Yeah, like even here, the slash is white instead of black, like for the rest of them, because the background is black. Okay, never mind. It's just a slashed skull. I just didn't realize that. I guess maybe in Harrow we didn't have a slashed cohort skull, so. Or maybe I just, like, am overthinking it because I'm like, hints! I must find hints! Anyway, chapter 10. Going to the beach, though, if there was still lots of light and plenty of people, was another matter. Nona tried her luck. "No beach," said Cam, drying dishes at the sink. "I didn't like the city today. 2 people got shot in the center while I was there. Someone else got dragged out of the river." "Drowned?" "Strangled. Neck snapped all the way around." "Gross," said Nona, and struck by an idea. "Cam, can't I go back to school for the evening?" "School? Why?" Nona tried to think up a really intelligent and persuasive reason. "Hot Sauce is worried about something," she said. "She said someone was watching the classroom and she wouldn't tell me about it. I want to make sure they're all okay." It wasn't that Camilla didn't take this seriously. She could see right away that Cam had taken it a little too seriously. Her dark slow down. Her dark brows drew together a fraction and she placed another plate in the rack, and one of her legs folded up beneath her so she was standing on one leg and resting the other foot at the top of that thigh. Not in the dark, she said, not after the gunfire today. But it's not dark yet, and the sky is always sort of light now. It'll be dark enough by the time school's over. Nona grew desperate. But I'm a teacher's aide. I've got a responsibility. I know, said Camilla, lowering the foot, then raising the other. It's also your responsibility to keep yourself safe. Responsibilities clash. Nona felt hot and cross. It's hard to feel responsible for the other two people I might be, she said, knowing she sounded crabby and not knowing how not to. I don't know them, but I feel very responsible for Hot Sauce and Honesty and Ruby and Born and even Kevin. And I've only got so much time, you know. Maybe the other two people I am would feel incredibly responsible for Hot Sauce, and the others too, Cam. Oh, one of them definitely, said Camilla. Maybe the other. I don't mean you've got a responsibility to them. You have a responsibility to me and the warden and to Pyrrha. In desperation, Nona flung herself down on the soft mat on the floor she and Cam had been using for stretches. Cam, responsibility just means you can't ever do anything you think is really important. Yes, said Cam simply, and let's stop waiting for Pyrrha and go pick up dinner. Okay, so they're all aware that she's on a timer, so it's probably just the, knowledge that eventually someone's gonna come back. That's interesting. Have they thought about it? Are they gonna miss Nona? Do they think she's gonna completely disappear? Who knows? You know what? I had this thought earlier, and I was like, you know what would be hilarious? It would be absolutely hilarious if Cam and Calamities and Pyrrha had managed to domesticate Electo the monster. I know it's a far reach. It's a far reach. It's probably not what's happening. But it would be very funny if they were the ones that managed to teach her how to be an actual person after all that time when nobody was like, yeah, she can't even pretend to be a person. That would be funny to me. Oops. Oh no, I just smeared lipstick on the book. How did that get off my mouth and onto my finger? You can't, oh, yeah. Now I've got lipstick on my book forever. Oh well. They walked to the fish shop so that Nona could look longingly at the ocean and listen to the fishmonger explain the latest about the port riots so that Nona could later translate for Cam. Nice girls with no guns needed to stay inside, urged the fishmonger. The space elevator had gotten breached about an hour ago because too many loyalist soldiers had been rerouted to the barracks siege, and the old workers had busted through with a keycard trying to hijack a shuttle off-world. Most of them had been shot, and there were no shuttles there anyway. There were no shuttles anymore. I'm sorry. The space elevator? Ma'am, you need to stop dropping bombshells on us. Oh, right. You don't know how not to do that. The space elevator had gotten breached. You know, I've always kind of, like, I have thought about that before. Like, it'd be interesting if, that was the way that people got to space, or like to a spaceport or something. I feel like I've had that idea before. Or more like an image in my head of just like a random elevator shaft up into, or that might be a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory thing. Whatever. My memory is not great, so I can't always connect things to where they originally came from. The space elevator had gotten breached about an hour ago because too many loyalist soldiers had been rerouted to the barracks siege. And the old workers had busted through with a keycard trying to hijack a shuttle off-world. The workers of what? Okay, so there weren't enough loyalist soldiers because they went to the barracks siege, whatever the heck is happening there. I think that's where one of the houses is, or some of the house people are. So, a loyalist. Loyal to what? The BOE, I'm assuming? They just like... locked people in the barracks and are trying to get through to kill them? Are they just like trying to murder necromancers? I mean, like, we know they're murdering necromancers. Got that much from the, you know, necromancer in a cage on fire. Oh my goodness gracious. Sometimes I'm still like, what? Yeah. Okay, they were trying to get... There were no shuttles anymore. So then what was it for? What is the elevator for? Unless, you know, they come with their own ships and leave with their own ships. And they don't store anything there. God, who knows? When Nona relayed this to Camilla, she said, "Hope Pyrrha takes the back roads." "Will Pyrrha be okay, Cam?" "Pyrrha's a survivor," said Camilla. But she let Nona slip her hand into hers, and they walked shoulder to shoulder all the way home, with the plastic foam container of spicy rice and oily fish hot and steamy in the crook of Nona's arm. It had been very cheap. People weren't eating the harbor fish because they said the blue light got into them. Okay, so... the assumption, my assumption, is that the blue light, the blue round thing that's glowing, is a resurrection beast. It doesn't seem like that, but I guess it is, because they were talking about heralds and stuff. Oh, I guess we've never really needed to know if resurrection beasts emit radioactivity, because it doesn't matter to lictors. It's interesting. We get all of this information through the lens of the lictors from Harrow's book. And then we get into the normal people world and it's like, what's happening here? We have a totally different set of rules. That is weird. They said the blue light got into the air too, and they wore masks for that, though Calamity said that was nonsense. Cam ate most of the fish and rice as Nona picked at the edges, and then there was all the fruit they hadn't eaten for afters. Nona's plate was left still mostly full, despite one genuine effort to eat and two not-so-genuine ones where she faked it. "You can drink 3 more mouthfuls or 2 and drink some water," said Camilla inflexibly. "But I've eaten so much today. You ate gruel and a sausage roll. But I'm full. I'm really full." "Have you been eating sand again?" "I haven't eaten sand in months," Nona protested, then more truthfully, "weeks." And more truthfully than that, 1 week. What's happening? Why is she hungry, weirdly hungry, and then can't eat? Is weirdly obsessed with salt water and likes to eat sand. What's happening? I feel like eventually it's gonna all make sense, hopefully. But also one of my friends just finished and she was like, "Yeah, I have so many questions." And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't expecting all of the questions to be answered by the end of this book, but I sure hope a lot of them are. Like I said, I'm probably gonna have to go all the way back through, and then I might just like do a little blurb after each chapter instead of just like doing this all over again, which would take way too long, and I don't think y'all want to do that. But I might just, you know, read a chapter and then film a little bit of my thoughts, either of what made sense or, you know, whatever. We'll see. I'm not even like a third of the way through the book. Nona eventually took the deal where she drank a glass of water and ate 2 more mouthfuls. As it turned out, though, she never had to eat the second, because the special knock sounded. 5 short, 2 long, which they changed often, and Cam unlocked and unbarred the door for Pyrrha. Pyrrha looked terrible. Her deep skin was powdered with concrete dust and shiny with smoke, splotched with rusty patches on the front that it took Nona a moment to realize were blood. She reeked of petrol and sweat. Camilla recognized the red stuff immediately and started trying to check Pyrrha over, tugging at her overalls, her arms. Pyrrha said swiftly, "It's not mine," and dropped into one of the chairs at the kitchen table. Nona got up and went to pour her a glass of ice water from the covered jug. Pyrrha said, "Thanks, Nums," and drained the whole thing. Nums? That's cute, though. Nona, fascinated, watched the brown column of her throat move as she swallowed. There was already a fine dark rust of stubble beneath her chin, amid the dust and the dirt, and when Pyrrha caught her looking, she felt there with her hand and said, laughing, I know. Gideon always had a 5 o'clock shadow at 3 o'clock. Sextus, can't you fix it?" If you kick the sebaceous glands back a notch, you can interrupt the hair cycle. Quick injection of the energy below the root will freeze the growth. Pyrrha's eyes were hot and shiny and her pupils blown wide. Nona hadn't even seen Cam and Palamides switch. Palamides was busy rolling up one of Pyrrha's sleeves, examining a slimy patch of scabbing over blood, and he said briskly, "No thanks. I had the joy of working on a body like yours the once, and I don't want to repeat the process for anything smaller than a brain hemorrhage. What hit this forearm?" "Vehicle shrapnel. They were taking pot shots at the police, and the police took pot shots back with a munitions launcher." Pyrrha held the glass out beseechingly to Nona. Nona went and refilled it. "Don't worry. I squatted in a public bathroom and forked everything out myself. It's mostly closed up already." "Did you?" "Saved who I could, left the rest to be buried," said Pyrrha. "Or burned. Lots of them were burning. Couldn't do anything for them. People notice when you don't burn is the thing. There was an audience. Others have been killed for less." Palamides said nothing. He pushed at a pair of glasses that didn't exist, made a noise of annoyance, and swept his hand lightly over the arm. Nona, fascinated, watched the blood peel away and frizzle to nothing, leaving a long zigzag of clean open meat on Pyrrha's arms that was wrinkling shut as they watched. Nona said, "Was it the port riot? Were you there?" "You heard about that, Kitty?" "No," said Pyrrha. "It's just aftershocks. I was on that side of the city is all." Palamides said, "Is it finally kicking off?" "What? What's kicking off? The war?" "Not yet." Pyrrha curled her arm inward, examining the disappearing wound, and took the cool glass from Nona's hands. Her fingers had left dirty fingerprints on the glass. "I know that sounds ridiculous, but not yet. Even though they're chucking bombs at the cops and yelling shit about no deals, no lords, no zombies, and cops love zombie money. When it kicks off, nobody will be yelling anything. This is anger, not fear. False labor pains. Do they still do gravid carry where you come from?" "What is that?" Gravid carry. Please tell me that this actually means something. Number of times a woman has been pregnant or carried. Pregnant is gravid. Gravid. Oh my goodness. So it doesn't make sense. Do they still do pregnant carry? I mean, that's not exactly what it means, but you know. "On the 6th, only for research," said Palamides. "I helped at a birth once. There's a lot of noise and rundown before the real thing happens." Oh, she's literally just talking about a regular birth. And they just, okay. So they just, you know, they don't do regular unassisted births just ever? On the 6th, only for research? Is that just like a regular? Like, I was aware that Hera wasn't, you know, made regularly, obviously. I mean, I assumed she was still, you know, carried. Once again, I'm making assumptions. Don't make assumptions about this shit. You never know. Whatever. Pyrrha necked the second glass of water all the way down and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand before she could think better of it. When she saw the result, she grimaced. Nona fetched a damp cloth without being asked so that Pyrrha could start to clean up. "This has been a shit day. I'm having a cigarette. I'll smoke it out the window." Nona froze, but Palamides said calmly, "No good. Cam sold them. Said they were our most liquid asset." She expected Pyrrha to get very sarcastic. Pyrrha didn't yell ever, but Nona experienced so much yelling amongst her friends that she deeply preferred it. Pyrrha just sighed deeply. How much did she get? Maybe a third of what they were worth. What an entirely haunted time to be alive. That's amazing. "Nona, my sweet, can you draw me a bath? My filth's got filth." Well, what an entirely haunted time to be alive. I should probably put a blue tab on there instead of a green one for personal favorites, but it's still a pretty, like, it's a pretty quote. one of those where, like, you could, I feel like you could later on put that somewhere, and it'd be like a subtle, you know, subtle marker of your nerdism or whatever. Nona sprinted to the bath and put the plug in the plug hole and dutifully started grating the soap bar into fine dusty flakes to put in the hot water, not even minding leaning over the sweaty hot water tap. But she pricked up her ears when she heard in the other room Calamity saying softly, "I'm going to let Camilla look you over. Tell her what you told me." And Pyrrha saying, "Wait a moment, Warden. Wait. I want you to hear this first, not Hecht. I need you to stop Hecht, okay? I need you to hold her back." Nona shut off the hot water tap. It wasn't as though she was deliberately trying to eavesdrop. She was still carefully holding the paring knife and trying to make the longest, unbroken rind of soap that she could, watching the flakes disappear and dissolve into white scum on the surface of the water. Her hair was itchy with sweat. She heard Calamity say, "Oh God, Pyrrha, just tell me." Pyrrha said, "In the chaos, they found some people to take to the park tonight." I love how, like, ominous that sounds, because it just sounds like a regular thing, but we know that's not what it means. There was a very long silence, or else Nona couldn't hear. Pyrrha said, "I thought, blah, blah, blah. I saw them for 2-3 seconds in the back of a truck. 3 adults. It was dark. Said they'd taken them off the cops. One person I asked said they'd been in the barracks. Another one said they'd found them wild." Nona couldn't wait anymore. She ran the cold water tap before she died of being too hot, and let the water run over her wrists and palms like Camilla had taught her. Wrists were the best place for cooling down. That meant she only caught fragments until Pyrrha and Calamities helpfully made their voices louder. "You versus 200 motherfuckers with machine guns. Camilla versus 200 motherfuckers with machine guns, Sextus. I know you and she are doing some ungodly tricks with soul manipulation, but what do you think you are, a damn L-word? You're not even a fraction of one. You're only a step in the theory. The poor fools they have probably aren't even..." "How many people do you leave to burn tonight, Dve?" "You say that because you think it hurts, and because you're frightened," Pyrrha said coolly. "The answer, my boy, is multitudes. So long as it doesn't include you and me and Nona. We're all 3 of us in enough trouble as is. As it is. Don't make me repeat myself." Pyrrha, they taped their arms to their sides, and they put them in those cages, and they doused them in petrol, in gaslight. Yes, and they set them alight, and it's terrible, and usually somebody shoots them long before the fire takes them. There's always some softy in the crowd, Sextus, even for zombies. And it won't be zombies. Listen to me. What I've been trying to tell you this whole night is that me and the boys combed Site C and I found nothing. No bodies, no blood, none of your people. No sign. They were even kept there by Edenites. This is the public taking it out on a couple of poor bastards they pick up who are insane or drug-addled or said the wrong thing and gave someone a wonderful opportunity to get them out of the way. You know that's been the vast majority of the cage deaths since the initial flush. Even if it is one of yours, the number 7 will have them so out of their tree that they'll hardly notice when... "This isn't about house loyalty," said Calamities quietly. "It's about 3 people being burnt to death." Okay, so it's starting. I was thinking to myself earlier, I was like, oh, this is nice, but this is all setup. I mean, obviously things are happening, but nothing has really started really happening yet. We're just getting a whole bunch of information that we don't really know about as much. Okay, at least we're getting something. Yeah. I've got like 3 more of the dark purple tabs left. Okay, so do they call necromancers zombies? Why are they calling them... They're still alive, aren't they? Is there like something fundamentally different about necromancers where they like had to... No. Or is it because they were all made originally from dead people? Or like the first necromancers were... See, I would love to know this information, but I'm just wildly speculating in the meanwhile. There was a big silence. Nona made a number of tiny noises, cleaning the paring knife, cleaning her hands, making sure Pyrrha's towel was dry. Pyrrha said, "Keep Camilla home tonight. I'll call it quits for the 6." Calamity said, Do you know she has a half-sister? Did she tell you? It's not my secret to tell. They're quite fond of each other. Camilla's 10 years younger. Kiki's a member of the oversight body, junior fellow. She was one of the group that came to negotiate with the Tessifon wing. I didn't know that, no, said Pyrrha, alongside 15 other of the finest minds of my house, said Palamedes, led here by my conviction and Camilla's hand, my colleagues, my friends, my family. The people they put in cages will be someone's family, someone's friends. Keep Camilla home tonight, said Pyrrha. That is all I am saying. Keep her home. No heroics. I'm not moved by sentiment. Whatever it takes, don't feel, just do. Tonight I hate almost all the human race, said Palamedes wearily. That's a feeling, said Pyrrha brutally. Kill it. Palamedes did not seem to notice when Nona crept back into the kitchen, drying her hands on her front. She had ducked into the bedroom. It was just Pyrrha, peeling her bloodied shirt off and putting it in the sink to soak. Pyrrha with her naked chest so moth-eaten with scars that even Camilla and Palamedes couldn't guess the cause of. Nona always felt soft and tender when she saw Pyrrha with her shirt off, and liked to rest her head on her back, between her prominent shoulder blades. That's just also a great way to hug someone. I love that. I love, like, back hugging someone, and then, like, just, like, having my face, like, rest between their shoulder blades. I don't know why. It's very comforting. Nona, you're correct. But tonight she just said humbly, "Can I go into the corridor for 5 minutes?" Pyrrha raised one eyebrow. Does Cam let you do that? No, but I just want to sit outside number 302. They play the radio and we don't have one. Sounds harmless. What's Camilla's objection? She says they're maniacs. Go. Take 5. I won't tell her if you don't get shot, said Pyrrha. Nona unlatched the door and tiptoed outside, even though she had been granted permission. The desire to listen to the radio at number 302 was only a mild blind. A mild blind? What does that even mean? Like, I want to look it up even though, like, I understand the contextual meaning, because I'm curious about using that word that way. She knew that if she hung around the question of the remaining mouthful would come back into play, and she wanted a moment to walk by herself and think by herself. The corridor lights were dimmed, and the cool linoleum under her bare feet felt sticky with each step, and condensation left perfect Nona-shaped footprints on the squares as she went. The windows were all blinded and boarded, so she could not crack one and get a fresh breath of air, but she lolled outside number 302. The radio was on and was playing something more mournful she could not really translate. Nona always found listening to the radio much harder to understand, with no mouths and no eyes. She sat there in the moist, dim corridor night, thinking escapeful thoughts. She wondered if she quite had the bottle to go down the stairwell and down to the garage and check if anyone she knew was down there, but that felt like more of a betrayal than she wanted to truck with. Once again, bottle and truck. You know what, this probably is just slang that I don't know. Like, it might just be like Kiwi slang I don't know. Or future slang that I don't know. Outside number 302, she found a window that had only been taped up most of the way, and peeled it off just a little bit more with her fingertips. The sun had set. The nighttime light was blue from the sphere that hung over the city, and she let the light touch her eyes and her lips, and felt better for it. Okay, I understand. There's an emphasis on eyes and mouth. Not sure what that means, but I get it. Okay? Oh my goodness. All of these little hints. And so mysterious. And then we're getting it even bigger. This was a secret that Nona kept from Pyrrha and Camilla and Palamedes. Almost the only one she kept from them, but one too beautiful to tell. She knew the luminous sphere hanging above the city high in space had kicked off all the riots, and was making everyone scream. It had caused the siege in the port, and made people throw themselves in front of buses, and made everyone say the end of the world was coming soon. It was making everybody's lives horrible, and it had given Calamities and Camilla the same grave, pensive expression, and Pyrrha slapped on an extra nicotine patch every time the fog burned away, and it hung like a great blue ball in the sky. But Nona loved the blue sphere as much as she loved everything else. She and nobody else could hear it sing. See, this is why I think that Alecto is involved. Okay, this is probably a hint that I'm not totally wrong, because I'm pretty sure I put together mostly correctly the idea that Alecto was, if not the soul of Dominicus, something similar, which would kind of make her a resurrection beast. Though that idea, that theory, I do not take credit for. I definitely saw it on Tumblr somewhere before Nona even came out. But yeah. So considering that big blue sphere, I'm assuming, is a resurrection beast. Even though we've never really seen one before. Well, we've seen like a very small one, but it's less a resurrection beast and more just the soul of the planet after Harrow killed it to keep Seven from flipping it or whatever. I don't even know if this is even the 7th one. It might be, I guess. I don't know what it's doing. I don't think anyone does. But it's interesting that it shows up as a sphere. Almost like a blue sphere, like literally a ghost of a planet. I mean, I know that's what it is, but like usually they're not described that way. They're described more, not humanoid, animoid. That's not a word. Animorph. No. They've got more animalistic characteristics than, they don't look like a giant ball. Usually, from what we have had described. Anyway, Nona can hear it sing, apparently. "Good night, Varin," she said. When she tiptoed back down the corridor, the whole building seemed still tonight, as though it were tucked into a dark corner, hoping nobody would notice it. She opened the door as quietly as she could. There was nobody in the front room. Nona heard the slopping sounds of Pyrrha in the bath. She walked on the balls of her feet to the bedroom, and she found Camilla in front of the recorder with a single lamp on. Camilla, with her arms clasped around her knees, her chin sunk down to the tops of her thighs, staring grayly out into space. Nona lay down on the mattress. She said she felt very tired and sad all of a sudden, seeing Camilla tired and Camilla sad. On some impulse, she opened her arms, and Camilla unexpectedly lay down next to her and crawled inside them, not quite letting Nona hold her, but letting Nona put an arm around her, putting an arm around Nona in return. It was hot, but Nona didn't mind. "Cam," Nona whispered. "What's up?" "I could go to the park for you," whispered Nona, desperately trying to sort through the words, say the correct thing, communicate the right desire. "I could help. Really? You know what happens when I get hurt. That's got to be worth something." For some reason, I'm feeling that means more than just her healing. It might just be her healing, but... Camilla said, "Is that your plan, getting hurt?" "Well, it might freak them out," said Nona, "and I'm not scared of dying. Really, truly, Cam, I'm not." "Why not?" said Camilla. Nona thought about it. "Because I like letting go of the pull-up bars and falling off," she said. "I don't like the part just before you let go, and I don't like the part where you hit the floor. But I like the letting go." "Interesting." "I don't let go," said Camilla. "It's my one thing." Nona was amazed at that. The idea that Camilla, who could do so much and do it so fluently, could sum herself up as having one thing. Amazed, too, a little, that anyone might not love the weightlessness when your fingers slipped off the metal and you hung unsuspended in midair. Camilla's hand wound itself around the end of her braid and held it, as though to find some kind of leash or safety rope, as though Nona might really fall. She was half asleep by the time Pyrrha finished with her bath, and rinsed the bath down twice. This meant it was Nona's turn to take a bath, so she undressed herself half asleep, and would have been all the way asleep in the water, once she got in if Camilla hadn't been there saying every so often, "Not yet," which kept her awake, because it would have been terrifically stupid to drown at this point. She was 3/4 unconscious, pulling on the shirt she slept in, and stumbled out of the bathroom but didn't quite get it all the way, so that Pyrrha had to say, "Tits, Nona, don't give Camilla a heart attack," which jolted her awake enough to lie down on the mattress and rebutton her shirt from the bottom. She reached nearly all the way up before she fell deeply and completely asleep. Give Camilla a heart attack that she didn't button the shirt up correctly or all the way? Didn't quite get it all the way. That's funny. Alright. Time for a John. John 5:18. And the dream night had fallen, or what she assumed was night. They were lying atop the hill they had climbed, and he was pointing out all the constellations that they would be able to see if it weren't for the thick green cloud and the softly falling flakes of ash. They were lying head to head, their eyes aimed at the right part of the sky to see, or in this case not see, the Southern Cross. The stars were sweet and familiar, but she did not know their names, though they seemed to be at the tip of her tongue. She asked him why it was called the Southern Cross. He said that was just one name for it, but the stars were in a cruciform pattern, and it was only visible from the southern hemisphere. He said when he was little, he'd been taught it was the anchor of a ship. He still preferred that, he said. Liked the idea that the Milky Way was pinned down and couldn't go anywhere. Said when he was a kid he hated change, any change at all. She had quite liked change, mostly, but he did not want to dwell on that, so she asked him about the fingers trick, and he was happier to talk about why it had upset everyone so much. He said, "Keep this in mind. It was the first time anyone had ever done it. You couldn't explain it away. There were no strings or magnets, no illusion of the witch or whatever." John, what does that mean? Illusion of the witch. Are you meaning like smoke and mirrors? I could repeat it for anyone who wanted to walk in and deal with M dry retching in the corner. And I did. Everyone had come to watch, the whole gang. And by then, he said, by then it was easy. By then I had Titania and Ulysses sitting up. By the end of the day they were walking around with me, sitting down when I sat, or standing when I stood. It gave the others the absolute shits. Again, I didn't mean to be a creep. I just wanted them close so I could look after them. It seemed so important. And A was right. I wasn't operating on a lot of food or sleep. Sorry, I'm suddenly remembering that I thought I wanted to mark that part. No, it's fine. I don't think it's important enough to put a... And A was right. I wasn't operating on a lot of food or sleep. He said everyone had a big fight over what it meant. C and G took it fine. Funny in hindsight that they were the ones who were the least weirded out. C had been raised in Little England Anglican, and G's grandparents who raised him had been religious as well. Religious as hell. White Sunday and suit and tie for church, that kind of thing. It was M who couldn't take it. M had been hard atheist since she was 12. But she got over it. She was a walking contradiction anyway. Her best friend in the whole world was a nun. Also, at some point, A gave her a benzo and a shot of whiskey, so that helped. Benzo. I'm too lazy to look up what that is. He said, but you know what? They wanted to believe. All of them. We all wanted a miracle. Everyone wants to believe that God's randomly made them one of the X-Men. We all thought of you right away, what it could mean for you. When he says it like that, it makes it seem like he's talking about a person and not, you know, the sun. So, I don't know about my theory there. It could be, though. Could be. P was worried that this was some kind of zombie apocalypse, but Titania and Ulysses weren't zombies. They were extensions. Constructions without a soul. They hadn't woken up. They hadn't resurrected in that sense of the word. Their bodies moved when I wanted them to move. And then I stopped having to hold the strings. I could say, go here, or go there. And they'd go like I'd programmed them to. When it said their bodies moved when I wanted them to move, it just made me think of, like, Harrow and her parents. You had to make sure you told them to stop, or they'd keep walking into things. It was like they could talk or bite you, you know? Oh, it wasn't like they could talk or bite you, you know? I wish they could have. But they were just me. For a moment they were both silent, brushing ash off their faces, their hair. It was falling thick and fast like snow. They took shelter beneath a burnt-out tree and watched the ash hump up against the rocks and branches. Some of it got in their mouths. How did I manage to get lipstick on the page again? Was it on my fingers? It's a mystery. After a moment he said, I knew it was fine. I knew I touched something, come away with something that could be used for good, could be used to fix everything, used for you. I only had to figure out how. There was so much to figure out. But I've got a dream team on tap, eh? People who could think. C's N, she was on board. Kitharev. And maybe that's the Cavalier. I don't know. I don't remember all their names. C was still pretending they weren't dating. She was an artist, so that was cool. If you have 2 scientists and an engineer and a detective and a lawyer and an artist, you're pretty much sweet as. Sounds like the start of a joke, right? 2 scientists, an engineer, a detective, a lawyer, and an artist walk into a bar to help me become God. That's creepy. Like, I get it, but that's creepy. I don't know what tab to put there, so I'm going to put a purple tab because I have the most of them. I'm not sure if that's narratively important, but it's not. He said, they put me through my paces. I was exhausted all the time. We all came up with trials to figure out what I could do, what I couldn't do. There was too much to go on. We figured out early that what really helped was if I was near the dead bodies, if I was in the facility. Back then we thought maybe there was something about the ground. Oh, it was the decay. Is the energy decay? It's like a little bit more complicated than that. Something about our particular patch and the Wairarapas. I probably mispronounced that, my apologies. But if we loaded up the UT with a bunch of bodies and looked out for the cops, we could do the same thing anywhere else. The corpses were what mattered. They were my batteries. It's creepy. He said, so of course what do M and A do? They go raid a fucking graveyard. I was pissed off with them about that. So it was P. But like mainly because it was illegal and she had to cover it up. Poor Pyrrha. What that proved, it wasn't that we had a load of specific magical corpses on our hands. I could take a body that had been dead for 20 years and do the same thing. Can't believe we didn't get caught. He said, at that point we knew that was the biggest risk. Getting caught, getting hushed up, getting flown to some government facility in America, or weaponized, given to another group of stakeholders, or bought by another magnate son of a bitch. I guess we'd seen too many movies. We assumed that we'd all go missing, get disappeared, get used for evil. He said, so we figured that what we had to do was to make as big a noise as humanly possible, turn to the public, find out if anyone else was like me, if there was someone out there who could do the same thing. And there was a way we could do just that. It was a different time back then. I didn't want to do it. It felt too kill switch, too awful to contemplate, too grisly, too shitty. But it was the only trick we had up our sleeves. He sighed and said, we had the internet. We decided to stream. She said, what is this internet? And he said, see, I did make a utopia. That's it? There's just a blank page after. That's mean. I mean, I get it. I understand. But you don't have to drag us like this. You didn't have to do that. I get it. I get it. Our obsession with the internet is too much. The burn, though. I feel like there was something else that I wanted to use as an idea for a caption. And I can't remember what else it was. I might find it while I'm editing, since I've been doing these in clips that I actually have to edit this time. Alright! I don't know if I'll get to do more today. I'll try to do another chapter today. Or not chapter, another part today. We are at day 3, I think. Yep, we're at day 3. I might not do all of it because the days seem to be getting longer, but we'll see. It is 4, so it's time for me to move to the sunroom. That's where I'm going to do my editing.